Good morning. In today's video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to integrate a newly integrated or a newly created scaffold for the activity resources. So I've created a scaffold just for the activity resources. So it's really something that it's going to be a scaffold of elements that I want to show down here. So I'm going to take you through the very beginning of that process just so you can get an idea of that. And I'm going to style it up and configure it from the very beginning. So I thought that would be an interesting thing to go through. So the very first thing that I did is, I created, I'm not going to do that in this video, but I just created a link. And if you'll notice that that's going to activity resources and it's passing in a parameter activity ID 1073. So right now, if I click on it, it doesn't go anywhere. Um, and that has to do with, this pane is sitting within a turboframe tag called edit activity details. Okay, so whenever you have a frame around something and there's a link inside of it, by default, it's going to expect that the thing that it renders or the thing that it goes to should have that same tag. Okay, so by default, when you create a new scaffold for an index, this is the default code that comes out of it. So this doesn't have the turbo frame built into it already, so this isn't going to render. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy that turbo frame tag and then paste it over in our index. Um, so let's see, I'm just going to select everything and then indent it. All right, so what I've done now is I've added that turboframe tag around this index for this scaffold that came up. And now what I should expect to see is that when I click resources, it should render. Now it's rendered. Now it's pretty basic. It doesn't have anything in it. It's doesn't work as intended. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy um, I'm just going to delete everything that's in here and clear it out, and we're just going to start fresh. And I'm going to use one of my other, I'll use the activity relationships view as kind of my template or starting point for this, and I'll just kind of gut it. Um, so one of the interesting things with the turbo frame is that your layout is doesn't come across with your view. So if you had a layout that represented this bottom pane, you wouldn't be able to see it. So what you end up doing is putting your layout more in the view. In this case, it's okay because everything's going to be done in line with it. You're going to add resources in line. You're going to delete resources in line, similar to what I was doing with the relationships, except I'll be editing in line as well. So all right, so I've created my turbo frame for the index. Now I'm just going to go and pull in my activity relationships index as a starting point. Now this is like the brute force method, but let's be real, we all do this. I don't feel like rewriting a lot of stuff because there's a lot of I don't want the turbo frame. I don't want the turbo stream from activity. But there's a lot of stuff that's, just styling everything that I don't want to redo. So I'm just going to start that as a starting point, do that as a starting point. So I pasted that in. Now, obviously, I don't want a lot of a lot of this. Some of it's relevant. So, the activity code and title is relevant still. I still want to have, the tab. If I go back, um, I still want to have these menus and I still want that. And I still want this middle pane. Resources should be highlighted. So I'll have to do that. So the difference is, here's some of my styling. Um, the difference is here is that, you know, obviously I have a different text style on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this. Actually, I'll just cut it and repaste it. So and it's just quicker to change the label and the link. And the resources, you know, all right, so I have activity relationships. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm just going to set it as pound. Um, so this is going to give me the indigo 700, so it's going to give me that purple. And then there's also a border indigo 700 that gives me that purple as well. So I have the text and the border, so that's changing. Everything else is going to stay the same. Now, I could be using the link to here, I just don't. I find that I end up adding a lot of extra icons and different things. So over time, if it's simple, I'll use the link to. If it's not, I won't. Um, but here I'm just rendering that activity ID so I can pass that as a parameter. So I'll need to pass a parameter activity ID to this index controller as well. So I can render things like the activity. You know, I want to say the details, so I want to keep the same header. Um, so that's the same. So manage activity relationships, we're going to change that to resources. Activity relationship errors, I'm going to change that to resource errors. So I'm going to use a lot of the same, you know, um, the same setup that I have. One of the differences here um, is, let's see. So what I have here is, if you guys are familiar with Tailwind, is with Tailwind, if you have a grid, you can specify the columns. You know, and I have the error message, I have it spanning all 6 columns. So I say there's 6 available, and I'm going to span all 6. Now I don't have to specify a row tag like you do in Bootstrap. So I can just go down to the next section. And so I'm just saying here that this is going to span 3 columns. So this is where my predecessors were. This is where my successors were. So I really don't need anything related to the predecessors. I can get rid of that. That's unnecessary. And this is the same thing. So I really only need one column area for doing everything that I want to do. So I can keep this section. Obviously, I can just call this resources. And then, you know, what I want probably, you know, so this next section, if I go over here to relationships, this is, so I just have right now, I have this um, as a item on my page because that's what I've edited. Uh, so I don't want that to be just 3. I don't want it to be the shorter width. So I'm going to make that 6. So now it's going to be full width. Um, now, for each of the resources, I'm going to have maybe a resource, you know, a quantity. Now, if I look at, well, I won't go into that detail, but I'll just say resource quantity and then cost. So really, the resource is going to have a price, and we're going to say I want so many man hours of maybe a web developer, and this is what it's going to cost. Okay. Um, so one of the things that I had to do with my other my relationships thing or view is when I did an insert, I used a TurboStream to insert it into the appropriate column. I'm not going to do that here, and so that's why I had this identifier, you know, because I was TurboStreaming inserts directly in here, so I don't need that anymore. I don't need that identifier, but I'm going to keep some of the styling on that. So what I'll do here is I'll just say activity resources. And then I'm going to loop through each activity. So right now I've said, hey, I want the resource, I want the quantity, and the cost. So what I've done here is I've done the DOM ID here. So this is so I can add a new um, successor. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to change that to an activity. So this is just the boil. This is where we're starting out. We're going to build a list of activities, or I'm sorry, resources. And then we're going to change this to resource. Okay. So link to, so I had a link in here so I could traverse between the different activities. So that's really nice when you're going through a series of activities to figure out what's driving what. And so I did that. So here I had a link to. I don't necessarily need that here. I just need to show the resource resource code. So that's the field name for the resource. So I'll just display that. And then the next item. So the call span, that's telling it to be four columns. So this is similar to a table where you have table call span, and we've specified the total width of. Wait, I got some alignment issues. So this div tag here. Wait. I don't know. Oh, I have grid columns call 6. So I have another grid inside of this section. Um, so this is giving me the width of this resource code within here. Now, resource code shouldn't be very long. It should be pretty small. So resource code maybe 1. We're going to have another column for, well, we'll create a method, resource code and title. So there'll be a method that will display that. And let's just do resource code right now. So let's go ahead and add, resource code, resource quantity. I don't even know if that's really let's just look at the migration. So I created a quantity field here. I have direct. So what we want is the total cost for the cost and the quantity. So we want these two. So resource quantity. Now this is already rounded for us, so we don't have to worry about that. And then the other thing that we have to add is the total cost. So what did I call that? Total? Yep. So total. So bear with me, guys. I'm doing this on the fly with you. So kind of an interesting experiment. So I'm going to make this slightly bigger because I have one more column span for a deletion. So here I've created a button too. So this is kind of like a form button all in one, right? So this is deleting a certain this resource. So I have a button for that. So I'm just going to retool this. So I'm going to call this activity resources. So it's going to call the controller for activity resources. It's going to be destroy as the action. The ID. So the ID is going to be resource ID. method is delete, so that's the HTTP protocol method. And then we are passing in a parameter. So we're passing in an activity ID parameter, and the reason for that is that I want to be able to um, uh, when I do the update, I want to push the notice back to this stream. And so I'm passing in that activity ID. I also uh, want to make sure, I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that, but I do need to do that. Um, so that's why I do that. All right, so are you sure? So this is the button for deleting. It's really not that amazing. It's just a button for deletion. We've done that. So that's good. I don't see any problems with that. Um, now, the next item is, how do we have an add option? So I don't think I'll use the add option the same way. Um, so let's just start with that. So down here, I had the different add buttons, and then you selected an item. So what I'll do is I'll create um, I'll just need one of these views because there's two of them. So I'm going to get rid of the first one because I really don't need two. And I'm going to create, make this as a column span 6. So we'll have one big column for this, and it's going to be a form for activity resource new, right? Um, So one of the things that I'm doing here is that there's a lot of relationships here that are inherent. And so what I can do is, there's a user ID, company ID, project ID, schedule ID. I don't need a predecessor ID that are needed for this record to be added. So even though you only see one drop down here, there's actually several fields behind it. Um, So I'm passing in the activity ID, the schedule ID, the project ID, the company ID, the user ID. I'm doing a collection select. Now that's still valid. Uh, this is going to be my drop down, so it's going to be activity resource um, as my model, and it's going to be resource ID because there's a relationship there. Now I've set up a resource library already. I don't know if I have any resources in there, but hopefully I do. If not, I'll have to add them. Um, and then this is going to be, um, this is what is your your drop down box. So this is the identifier that is loaded into this resource ID. This is the thing that you see in your drop down list. So I'll be using resource code as the drop down list, and then this is going to be what is your collection select, or what's going to be in that list. So I want resource, um, and I'm going to pull in resource where, and I want to pull in the resources for this particular company. So I'll say company ID equals, and then activity company ID. All right, so I'm going to pull in that. And I only want, I really only want, let's just do ID and resource code. So limit the number of fields that I'm pulling down as resource code. ID, resource code, where company ID is at, ID, resource code, select the resource. So what I have here is I have a six grid setup. So I don't want this to work the same way as I had it before. just because I'm not going to have this going across the whole distance. I just want it to be a smaller area. So let's go ahead and tweak this a little bit. So the resource code is going to be 1. So that's going to capture all of these. I'll be doing another, I'm doing this all on the fly, so obviously there's going to be some terrible error that I'm going to make. So call span 1. So I made the resource code 3, so I'll do that again. So I want the quantity and the total. So call span 1. I'm just going to do a form input field, text field. I want it to be quantity. And I don't have a default value that I'm going to be providing it. I'm just going to copy that. And the total is not going to be available. So I'll just make this, it's really going to be generating this on the fly. And I haven't done any of that yet. Nothing has been done. So I'm just going to make this, well, I won't do anything with this yet. I'll just leave this blank. So I really just want a quantity and a list. So, all right, so the button's already call span 1 on here. So we have add, we have the quantity. So I can do this as 4 as the width, and this is can have a call span of 1. All right, so let's see what we have here. We have activity, we have resource, where company ID equals activity company ID, resource code. So this should give us the default coding that we need to make this link up. This should give us our collection select. This should give us our quantity for that. So that should be everything. So it's going to be 6 width. So we should have something that spans the bottom of this. It's going to be pretty wide as far as selecting it. So maybe that's a little bit much, but we'll just work on the user interface for that. So it's not going to work immediately. All right, so we've done that. So let's just go through here real quick, make sure there isn't anything that's a legacy from the old relationship. So, all right, make sure there's no, all right, there's nothing that's in here that should be legacy. So I think this is good as far as, a starting point. Who knows what's going to come out of it, so we'll just have to hope for the best. All right, so in this link over here that I've done, I had it specify activity resources, activity ID. Pass that as a parameter. Now I could do a pretty URL. I probably will do some retooling of that later. But right now I'm just passing in the activity ID. So in the activity resources controller, I'll just set activity equals activity dot where ID params. Let's do activity. Now I'm not using the find. I'm just using the where, and I'm going to pull in the first entry. So obviously you'll need to do some error control on this and deal with that. And I think there's a new method now in the latest version of Rails that gives you this process without having to do it the way that I did. I just don't remember what it was. So I'm pulling an activity where the ID equals blah, and then the parameter is activity ID, which we're pass, and it's going to give us that. So let's see how badly we failed when we hit this. Again, I'm doing this just on the fly, with you guys, just like I would do it, kludge it together myself. So let's do it. Moment of truth. Oh, it works. So that's pretty amazing. Obviously, my interface sucks. So let's just fix that really quick. So so the select the resource. I have two resources available, so that's cool. All right, so let's figure out why it's doing that. So grid columns 4. So I basically hose myself here. So the grid, with tail, when you have a grid and you have columns, so you can use this like a table. This should be 6. All right, so let's go ahead and save this. Um, all right, so that's a little bit more reasonable. I don't like there's um, I don't like the overlap here. That's not good with me on the ad. So I have the resource. I'm going to add a placeholder. Uh, quantity. So you can see that. Um, boom, quantity. Now there's a little bit of an alignment issue here. Um, so I have text small here, and I don't have text small here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out of it, and then I'm going to use it elsewhere. So I'm going to make everything in my form text small, and that should fix that minor alignment issue. Okay, so that's good. I don't like the overlap here, so let's figure out what's happening there. So call span, grid gap should be a gap that's providing enough space. I think I need to put this button inside of a div. So let's do that. Let's get rid of that and let's just see if that solves it. Oh, that didn't work out right. What is the deal with this? That is so strange. Hmm. I don't know why it's doing that. So I have so one of the tips that I saw with someone working with Tailwind is really using like the background colors to understand if there's issues um, with your layout or like what the width truly is. So I'm going to so everything's operating inside of this. Let's just check something. So got the div here. Everything looks like it's closing out properly. You got the button. Let's just do background color. BG red 50. All right, so it looks like I have the space here to capture that. One of the things I noticed here, I don't like the non-rounded. I mean, rounded is kind of overdone, but I'm still doing it. Gosh, that's so weird that it's doing that. I'm going to remove all the classes on this. It's still floating like that. Well, let's go a different route. I mean, I really just wanted to fix the margin. So ML2, let's just add some margin to the left. Gosh, why is it doing that? I guess maybe I have... Maybe it's the input that's the problem. So I'm going to try changing the width and see what happens. Okay, so all right, usual spam. I don't like that still. So, all right, there we go. So I just changed the width. So it didn't, the input was the problem. So it was overflowing into the add button. So I can get rid of the margin that I put on the button because it already exists within the gap. So Tailwind has this gap too. So here we go. So we have select the resource, select the quantity. So what I want to do is, let's give it a little better. I mean, this is just the code for the resource. I want to give it let it use the title as well. So let's just do that really quick. We're just going to edit the model and add. We already have the resource code and title, so I already have that. I just forgot that I had it. I guess I added it a little while ago. All right, so we're going to add the resource code and title to the selection list. Oops. I'm going to add resource code and title. All right, so let's see where we're at. All right, so now we have the resource code and then the title. Cool. So now right now this isn't going to work. So let's just look at what we have. So if I do an add, it's expecting a turbo stream. Well, right now it's not using anything. It's going to try to redirect me. I don't want to redirect me. I just want it to post what this thing is here. Okay. So let's do that. So the first thing I need is, I don't want to use the standard formats for doing any of my responses. Okay, so my other video I did an error response. So let's just start with that. So we'll do format that turbo stream, and then let's see. I don't remember the. Let's see. I don't remember the syntax. So I think it's render, and then this is going to be the file. So I'm going to call this create errors, create resource errors. So it's going to render that view. So by default, if you just say format turbo stream, it's going to render a view with the same name. Okay. So that's great. So one of the things that I want to do here is I want to keep the activity. I want to reference that or make that available to the stream, make that available to, when I do the publish. So let's just go ahead and set, activity resource dot activity. I'm just going to reference it that way. And the reason why I do that is because this, depending on where you are at, you could reference this from inside the view, but depending on which phase you're at, it may not have that. So it may not be just a single activity. So I'm always going to keep this available to my views when I'm working with it. So format turbo stream. So if I go in my view um, for the resource or activity resources, I just want to create a new file. And this is not going to do anything because we're actually going to use the model to transmit the change. All right, so new activities or new activity resources. All right, so I'm just going to change the title. This will just be create turbo stream. I think it's turbo stream. It's one word. Turbo stream.erb. So now I have a create turbo stream.erb. Oh, there's an underscore. So I need to rename that. All right, cool. So it's not going to do anything here because I'm going to use the model to do the broadcasting. All right. So what I do need to do is I do need to render my errors back to the user. So I'll create a new file. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to run it. So I'll do turbo stream dot replace, and the first argument is what's let's see. Let me go back to my oops. So this is what we'll use as a template. So I try to redo it. I don't remember. My memory sucks, just like everyone else's. So I'm going to have it replace the activity resource errors, and I'm going to have a partial activity resource activity resource errors. Boom. So I need to give this a name. Activity resource error .turbostream.erb. All right, so go back to my controller. Actually, render. Oops. I called this thing the wrong thing. So create resource errors. Well, we're gonna have the same error stream handling if it's a creation or if it's an update. So all this changes to activity resource errors. So we're in alignment. Boom. All right, so we've done that. Now we don't have the template for it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into my activity relationships errors template. I'm going to grab that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and just create a new file. Paste that in there. Now this one is going to be a template. So I'm going to call this underscore activity resource errors.html.erb. Boom. So I'm going to fix this. So really just some light tweaking. Resource I'll have to tweak this, so I'll just leave it as creating for now. And then I'm just going to say, what is the error? So I'm going to list the error messages. So I don't have anything that links back to the original, so that's good. I'm calling that in my partial activity resource errors. Activity resources. That would have been an error. Activity resource errors. Boom, boom, boom. So, so in my model, I don't think I have any validations yet. I have nothing. Oh, well, I don't have the resource code and title. I didn't create that, so I was looking at the resource. So, so here I'm just going to return self.resource code, resource.resource code. So I have a relationship to resource here. That's here. Now you'd want to build some error, some fault tolerance in here, because if this doesn't exist, you're going to get an error. Resource.title. Actually, I don't even need to do that. I could just do resource code and title. All right, so this will return the resource, the parent's resource code and title. So that's good. So, so let's do my validation. So let's just validate validates numericality of quantity. So we want to make sure that our quantity is there. It doesn't have to be an integer. So let's start out with that. Okay, so we can test the process. Now, I'd be surprised if we run through this and there's not some sort of error. So let's do that. So let's select my resource. Let's hit add. Let's watch everything blow up. Yeah, so that didn't. Let's see, what is the missing template? Activity resources, activity resource errors. Oh, wait. Okay, so this is not, I didn't name this properly. I thought I fixed it. Maybe I have the same problem with the create. All right. What the heck? Well, maybe I got a new keyboard, everybody, so kind of getting used to it. All right. All right, so let's go back. Let's just add it. Okay, cool. So it's working. So are you guys amazed? Because I am. So that's end to end. So I've already, that already works because I've already included that. So I've already done the tooling for the error removal. So, all right. Okay. So I think I have that error. I have an issue, but all right. So let's just try to add. A quantity of a trans specialist. So we're gonna have 23 hours. Let's say 40 hours. 40 hours it's gonna take. All right. So obviously, all right. I need to fix. Sorry, I'm looking at my other screen because that's where the errors are at. So I need to fix the index because I'm calling something that doesn't exist yet. So resource code and title. All right, so there we have it. We have our trans specialist is coming across. Yeah, that's great and all. So what we don't have right now, we don't have any broadcast functionality working. Like we haven't done that. So we're gonna do something. We're gonna set up a subscription to the activity. So what I'm going to do is the deletions here, I'm going to stream to this activity. So it knows to delete that. So we'll just do turbo stream from activity. I think that's the syntax. Yeah, so turbo stream from activity. So boom. So that should work. I'm just going to reload it just to see if it blows up. It's good to do things incrementally, so you're not troubleshooting something you did an hour ago. All right, so I have the stream coming up for that. So let's go ahead and set up that broadcast method. So where are we broadcasting to? Doesn't really matter because we're not inserting in anything. It's just going to broadcast to the activity, and it's going to delete or add. Oh, we want a target. So where's our list? We don't have a list. So I need to make a list for me to insert where I want to insert the new activity resources. So I'll just say activity resources as my target. Okay. So when I insert, that's where I'm inserting. So I'm going to just copy and paste, the methods that I did in my activity resource or relationship as a starting point. Wait, what? Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll just do that as a starting point. All right. So add activity resource. So in the other example that I did, I actually had to stream like in the relationships. Like when I add something to here, when I add a relationship, let's say when I add a relationship between these two activities, I need to stream the update to the first activity and the second activity. So here I actually have it broadcasting to both activities. So I don't need to do that. So send an update to the activity. So I'm going to broadcast the append to my activity because I belong to an activity. And the target's just going to be, where I created that ID. It's going to be activity resources. And the partial, I don't have a partial yet. So I'll have to create one. Okay. So the remove, send the update to the activity. So send an update to remove the resource under the activity. So, it's good to have these relationships. It makes it really transparent on what is doing what. So broadcast remove to self activity, broadcast append to activity resource. So now I need to add the methods that are going to call these broadcast events. So I could do after create. Let's do add activity resource. After destroy, remove activity. I need to fix the title resource. Okay, so all right, so so that's what we've done. So we've done these things. So remove activity resource. So that means that it should be working now. So let's just try that. Let's see, go resource. I don't know if this will work. I think I might have to do a little bit more work on it. Oh, boom. Boom, it's gone. So that's great. So we're working, so we can add it. Oh, I don't have that part working yet. Oops. So we seem to have some regression with what we've done. Okay. Oh, okay. So I didn't add the partial yet for activity resource. So what I'm going to do is let's just go ahead and create that partial really quick. So what I like to do is start out with kind of what I want it to look like here, and then let's create the partial from that. So here's my partial that I'm going to create from that activity resource. So let's just go to the views, and then for activity resources, let's just add a new file, paste, let's fix the indentation so we don't hate ourselves later. All right, so this is our partial. So I'm going to save it, and the partial convention is the convention is activity or underscore, and then the model name. So activity resource.html.erb. Boom. All right, so let's go ahead and just test that. Okay. All right, so partial is expecting to have a variable with an @ sign. So slight differences here. And then we're no longer going to have this activity reference that way. So we're going to have to do a resource dot activity underscore ID. All right, so cool. So I don't see any other references back. So other than that one, so I got to fix that. It's good to review your code at least before you send out updates, just so you get in the habit. of doing that rather than just waiting for the system to find your failures. All right, so I think that's good. So let's go ahead and try it again. So trans specialists, 12, add, and undefined method to key from no class. Under oh. Yeah, this was a stupid error. So resource, I didn't reference the actual model name. So I'm referencing, this is what happens when you take shortcuts. Resource, all right, it's activity resource. So I'm just gonna go ahead and oops. All right, so I'm still getting used to this. You know, I'm not used to developing on a Mac, so it's activity resource. All my my hotkeys are all like not working. All right, activity resource. I should just be able to do a mass replace, but oh well. All right. So activity resource, activity resource, activity resource, activity resource. Let's do this again. Undefined to key for no class. Am I wrong? Am I a noob? Probably. I'm just old. Just old and out of touch. All right, so it added it. It just didn't broadcast it. Could not execute command. So let's go back. I think. So it's appending to that. And it's appending. So it's rendering that. It's sending it. Hello? All right. Apparently I need an extended warranty. So right now what I'm looking at is, it looks like it's executing. Looks like it's executing the broadcast. Um, so what I think this is just another layer of complexity. So if I join the resources view, it's now streaming to that. So when I do an update, it's just so the deletion works. So I know the basic mechanics of the stream work. Oh, activity code and title for nil class. So there is an error in the view for activity resources. Activity code and title. Wait, what? Stroke. Div. Oh, because I don't have an activity code and title. So when I do this, oh, what's happening is I still have some, well, there's a few things going on. So let's just first look at, so the broadcast append activity to activity resources. So that should be the view that I'm appending to. So let's just look. We verified that ID matches. So that should be the same. Should be the same. So the stream is the same. So it says that it's broadcasting to the stream and it's appending it. Target is activity resources. ID is that, so it's generating it. It's just not coming over. So it says that this is the stream that it's sending to. So it looks like it's okay, so I'm just going to look at maybe it's not subscribing to that stream. works, sort of. Or does it not work? Does that not work? Interesting. Okay. Okay, so that works. So there's a, so when I've experienced this before, it's because it's losing the stream connection. So I think the deletion is breaking the stream, and that's usually because in the controller you don't have, you're not handling the turbo stream. So right now what it's doing is it's doing an action on destroy. And you don't want it to do this because it will disconnect the stream. So if you can see right now, when I delete it, I can't add it. Well, I can add it. What the heck? Well, something else is breaking the stream then. Maybe I'm just crazy. And, well, I guess it's working. So there's probably some terribly insidious bug here. So I'm going to, by default, have a turbo stream action on here, and I'm just going to create a placeholder for this. So you really need to do this. We haven't delved into the update yet, so I'll probably do that in another video. But at least you got an opportunity to see like the process end to end and how I just built that out. I mean, that wasn't too long. That wasn't too painful. Activity resources, new file. Handled by the stream. Not really doing anything. Destroy that turbo stream .erb. Okay. So see how far, if I broke it. Yeah, I broke it. Maybe not. There's definitely some interaction that's causing this stream to fail. So when you see this, that's usually there's something terrible happening, terribly insidious. And we don't want that. We don't want insidious things happening. So I'm going to start from ground zero. So I've unsubscribed. So here it's giving me an error that it couldn't execute the command unsubscribe. So that's interesting. Okay, so now we're good again. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some research, look into this, and see what, like it's working right now, but there's something in there that's causing the stream to disconnect. So in the past, when I've done this, that was usually caused by the controller and how it was handling things. the redirects were causing the stream to break. So we want to prevent that from happening. Because you'll see in here, um, you'll see an unsubscribe. So there's some sort of failure that's happening. Let's see if I can get to it. Um, so this is what's concerning is when you see, could not unsubscribe. Um, so there's some sort of issue where it's already disconnected and it's expecting to disconnect. So there's some sort of fatal error. So what we have to do is just track down where that's happening at and then just remove that error. It's probably because of the redirect and then not having maybe the activity ID referenced or what. So anyway, this was just a real quick, I had a scaffold. I didn't do anything with it. I created the styling for it. Really just copy and paste, rebuilt this list. Gave a basic interface for adding resources and quantities. Um, so what I want to do in the later videos, I'll go through the process of doing the inline editing of those records. But I think this is probably enough for now. And I appreciate you guys sticking with me and going through this with me. And that's all I got. Have a good day.